Hey there, I'm digital anchor Brandy Smith. For the first time in 50 years, NASA is heading back to the moon. The uncrewed Artemis I mission is scheduled to launch on Monday morning, beginning a 42-day journey around the moon. This mission is the first phase of a new era for NASA called Artemis, which will pave the way for humans to go to the moon and eventually Mars. I'm joined by Sean Fuller, and I guess my first question is, this historic mission launches next week, but step me through what we're going to see on Monday.
Yeah, this is great. This Monday is going to be the countdown to that first launch of Artemis I, as we call it, the SLS and Orion rocket. So 7:33 here in Houston that time. That's our targeted liftoff time. That'll be the launch of the rocket. The first time we're going to fly this in space as an integrated system, both at the rocket and the Orion. 8.8 million pounds of thrust when we lift off. That's a behemoth. Going to launch us up, going to put that Orion for our first test flight. It's going to fly out about 5 or 6 days later, go swing by the moon, go on an orbit out beyond the moon as we check out all the systems and get it ready for the next flight, where we'll put 4 crew members on it and fly them out around the moon as our building blocks as we start off the Artemis program.
That was going to be my question. So this is a test run. What are you going to be looking for on this run?
Yeah, this is a test flight. We've done a lot of testing on the ground ahead of time. You test all the systems, but as an integrated vehicle, this is the first time to fly it. So we'll get the paces out of it, the performance of the engines, the performance of the rockets, Orion as a spacecraft, how it's behaving and operating in orbit. You have the Orion crewed module, so we got some sensors in there of how radiation will be for the crew members. It's also the service module, the European service module, that provides the power and propulsion of all those engines, getting the performance data on them. How are they operating in orbit? We'll get a lot of that test data. Also, the heat shield on Orion. When Orion comes back in Earth, it'll be traveling about 25,000 miles an hour. That's about 7,000 miles an hour faster than a spacecraft coming back from the International Space Station, because Orion's coming from deep space. So we're going to test out all of those systems before we put crew on it.
Got it. There's been a lot of focus on space tourism in this past year, but Artemis is going beyond the point of Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and even farther than Apollo did, right?
Absolutely. This Orion Artemis, it's the biggest rocket human rated that we will have ever flown. Orion will fly 4 crew members when we fly it on Artemis II with a 21-day duration. That's longer than any of the Apollo missions. Apollo had a maximum of 3 crew members for about 2 weeks. Again, Orion will have 4 crew members for about 21 days, and that's just Orion itself. Artemis is more than Orion, one of the key components of it. But as we look into the future, you have the lander, so crews will go from there to the lunar surface, but then also Gateway. And that really gives us that longer duration presence around the moon. We'll have that capability, a small space station where Orion can go, then the life support systems on Gateway. We'll have crews down on the surface for a week, longer than a week, doing that research, collecting the science, building up technologies as we get ready to go beyond the Earth, moon, onto Mars.
That leads perfectly into my next question. So Artemis is the first in this entirely new set of missions for NASA. How is it going to get us ready to send humans back to the moon and back to Mars? Or not back to, I guess, onto.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to get us ready to do all that. The capabilities in SLS and Orion have that in mind. So as we build it, we'll use the SLS rocket to launch up components of our Gateway that will build that space station. We'll have technologies there. We want to do those close to home. You know, the moon is about 240,000 miles away, but it's significantly closer to Mars. So we'll go there outside the radiation belt that we protect us here on Earth, test out those systems, use them in the environment on the lunar surface, use them in the environment around the moon, develop those advanced technologies. We'll probably have spacecraft in the future that can come to Gateway and do test flights before that spacecraft then has crews that goes on out to Mars. So all that is building blocks with this destination of Mars at the end. We kind of call this Moon to Mars, and it's really building that roadway to Mars.
How much of these preparations for Artemis are happening at Johnson Space Center in the Houston area versus in Florida?
Yeah, there's a great buzz around here at the Johnson Space Center. Mission control. This is where mission control is for the Artemis missions. So they're processing the rocket and the spacecraft at Kennedy Space Center, doing a great job down there. All those ground infrastructure elements to come together. When the engine's light and it clears the tower, right here at the Johnson Space Controller, that's where flight control is. So for about the 42-day mission of this Artemis 1, we will have folks in the Mission Control Center, just like we did in Shuttle, or we have 24 hours a day for Space Station, controlling that spacecraft as it goes out, runs through these paces, a test mission, and then comes back and lands off the California coast, all controlled here in Houston.
For so many people, Apollo just changed how a generation looked up at the sky, at the moon, at the stars. How is Artemis different from Apollo?
Yeah, I think it's great. We're in a different era now. So we've had crews living on space station for 22 years almost. And I talk about that because there's been a permanent presence for a lot of the population. So now our normal is crews in orbit around the Earth. We're expanding that normal. There was a scouting mission in Apollo. Now we're permanently exploring beyond that, building this infrastructure that allows us to return sustainable manner. We're really expanding the frontier of human exploration out to the moon, and then doing that scouting mission out to Mars too in the future, where we look to then eventually expand beyond that as well.
I wasn't alive when the Apollo missions launched, but hearing this, it generates this excitement that I think probably that generation had as well when we were talking about going to the moon for the first time. Do you think Artemis can do that same thing, can inspire or generate that lifelong interest in space?
I think it's great. One of the things, my job takes me around the world, and I'm always inspired the number of people I see in airports and around the world that have T-shirts that say NASA on them or space. It's really something that's come here in the last decade or so, I'll say. People see this. We as a human species, we've always been exploring what's over the next hill, what's over the next mountain, what's west of the Mississippi River, all that exploration. We're just doing that now off of the Earth. We've done a lot of exploration on Earth. We're now going above and beyond that. I think it really inspires folks. They can relate to it, right? We all want to see what's ahead, what's new to discover out there, and that's what we're doing.
What are you most excited for about this mission?
That's great. This is being at first flight, it really starts the ball rolling on it. That this flight is going to get us a lot of data. Me as an engineer, right? I want to get that data back. You do a lot of calculations, a lot of testing on the ground, but that performance, there's nothing like getting out there and flying it. I kind of look at it and think about it. Maybe, for example, here on the ground, you look at a car and you want to buy that car and you know all about it, but until you get in it and drive it and you experience it, now you know what it's all about. That's what we're doing here. We're going to experience it. We're going to get that data back. It's going to help us on all the future missions as well as we go from theoretical design into reality.
It has to be really cool to be a part of all this. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, it's been exciting to be a part of this and really looking ahead at the future. I'm looking forward to the day we look up. Now we can see space station fly over. Not too distant future, we're going to look up at the moon. We have a space station around there. Crews on the surface. We'll see our neighbors and our friends here in Houston are the astronauts that will be doing that. That's pretty cool. We live in a pretty neat community.
Yeah, we do. Sean Fuller, thank you so much for your time and good luck Monday.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
If you want to read more about the Artemis I mission or Artemis overall, we have so many more resources on khou.com.